What is going on, everyone? It is Rob and Jonny. Welcome to episode 29 of the MMArcade Podcast. Rob, I'm boiling. It is so hot right now. Aircon's blasting. I don't know if I'm going to survive this one.
Dude, I don't feel bad for you at all, dude. I had to wrestle today. I had to wrestle yesterday. I had to wrestle on Monday.
Rob.
Like, it is. You almost lost me. We almost lost half of this podcast. Okay, it has been hot. Like I just end up spending the entire afternoon, night trying to hydrate. Like
Far out.
My piss is like dirt brown until like literally I'm just about to go to sleep. And then I have to wake up 17,000 times to go bathroom throughout the night because I've drank that much water. It's a never-ending battle.
Sounds like a you problem, Rob. I was just talking about my minor issue, and you're like, Mr. UFC fighter. Well, what about if you were training?
If we want to whinge about heat, I'm here for it. I'll sit here all day whinging. I love it. It's a Whittaker thing.
But thankfully, you did survive, and I'm all right, because this is a huge episode. We've got a massive card to talk about. We've got a bunch of fight announcements to talk about. Even in the games news, there's a couple of big pieces of news. So we're going to get into it. But to start off this podcast, I do want to shout out, off the back of last week's episode, we have 2 new members on the channel that we want to give a shout out to. Dana and Edie, and also just N. That I swear that is just their username. Thank you so much for becoming members on the channel.
No, thank you very much. Dude, like he typed N and just gave up. He's like, you know what? That's enough. But welcome to the team, boys, or girl maybe.
Yeah.
And doesn't give me a lot to go off, right? Thank you very much also, guys, for putting up with us last week. We had a lot of technical difficulties. That word almost stumped me, right?
That was an understatement.
We had a lot of problems, and you know, hats off to Jonny being patient enough to help work through it all. Touch wood, this cast seems to be, I don't know, we got promising signs. But let's thank you for bearing with us last week. We're back to our usual makeup. So let's get a good one in.
100%. So let's start off with. Well, go on. What do you want to say
before we go off? Okay, so as I do, and as Jonny does as well, we read all the comments, because that's how we structure our cast, and that's how we add and remove things, is based on what you guys want to see.
I knew you were going to mention this. I did.
Straight out of the gate, dude. One dude dropped. Fun fact: Rob's last finish was in 2017, mate. Mate, the army smelled blood in the water, and they attacked him for pages. Pages, man, pages. Now, I am so touched you guys defended me like that, but we don't have to smash him that bad. And with a guy that's just looking for trouble, like, he knew what he was getting into, right? Just chill out, okay? Dudes are hard to finish in the top 5. It's hard. It's a hard business to try and cement the finishes in, all right? But yeah, let's keep it nice. Come on, you know.
I would say they didn't know what was coming for them. There was like at least 50 comments for what I saw of people jumping on that comment.
Blood in the water, and some of them were hilarious, right?
We won't repeat them here, but if you are curious, go back to the previous episode. That comment is still there. It's pretty funny.
We're not condoning this though. Let's just keep it chill.
Absolutely not.
Chill, right? But you asked for it, kind of. Dude. All right.
So let's get into it. UFC 296 predictions. As I mentioned, a bunch of great fights on this card. We're not going to be able to talk about everything in such detail because, as I said, a bunch of fight announcements as well, a bunch of other stuff that we want to talk about it. But let's talk about the main event, the thing that everyone is here to see. Leon Edwards against Colby Covington. I'll give a bit of a spiel about it. Everyone, Edwards, 21 wins, 3 losses. He hasn't lost since 2015, since Usman, which is actually kind of insane. He hasn't fought all that much either, but hasn't lost since then. He's beaten Luque, Cerrone, Gunnar Nelson, Dos Anjos, Diaz, and obviously Usman twice, but previously lost to Usman back in the day. Colby Covington, bit different resume recently at least. 17 wins, 3 losses, but he's only won 2 of his last 4. 2 losses to Usman, as we know, but he beat Woodley and recently Masvidal. Rob, they're versing. They've been talking a lot of smack against each other. It is the main event. What is your breakdown for Edwards against Covington?
Well, is there any fight Colby's in where he's not talking smack? Okay.
No, but that's why he's such a good salesman. I don't like the guy, but I respect him for it, honestly. He's good at what he does.
I feel like, you know what, I summed it up today when I was speaking to someone. He is like a real life keyboard warrior. You know what I mean? He's a keyboard warrior in real life. You know what I mean?
But who can back it up? He's not just talking on the keyboard. He can actually fight,
obvious.
right?
Yeah, obviously. Yeah. But he's also like, it's only for the cameras. Everyone knows it at this point. It's been like recorded and spoken of everywhere that he only does it for the camera. So he's like but then when he does get on camera, he turns it on to 100. Like, I love it. I'm here for it too. This fight, where do we start? Now, I think if you would ask me before the second Usman fight, third fight maybe, if you want, the third Usman fight, second title fight with Usman. Yeah. If Leon had a hope in heck against Colby, I would have said no way. Just because I've been ringside to Colby's fights, and I've seen the volume and the output, his ability to throw 3,600 punches and then shoot and then fail the shot, come up again and start throwing again, only to reshoot. And to do that for 5 rounds is uncanny. His coaching staff has said it. He said he's got an extra lung. It seems that way. But this was before the performance Leon put on last time. Yeah. All right. I think the performance he put on against Usman in his last fight really defined how he's going to beat Colby. So where Colby's had problems with is guys he can't just walk into and take him down. Okay. And we saw that with the Usman fight. He couldn't just walk through his punches to take him down, wear him out a bit, and then start to beat him in the punches because of that. Like we saw Colby do against Lawler, like we saw him do against RDA, like we've seen him do against a lot of other guys. Yeah. I think Leon, in that last fight, showed me that he can defend takedowns, but more importantly, he can also threaten you in a space before the takedowns even happen. So you're worried and you're in danger entering that space, just trying to get in there. You know, being a southpaw also, great advantage, but just trying to get into that range, you're in danger. And then when you do finally get in the range, maybe you took shots, maybe you didn't, you can't cement what you risked so highly to get in there. And I think the way he fought Usman in his last fight, Leon, was spectacular. And that performance kind of highlighted for me how he beats Colby.
Yeah. It's actually kind of incredible stylistically how similar both of their previous matches were in comparison to this fight that's about to take place. Like, when you had Edwards against Usman, it was actually incredible how well Edwards dealt with Usman's shooting and takedown attempts. His defense, especially in the latter part of that fight, was impeccable, bro. Mm-hmm. And then when they were separated, those kicks were giving Usman so much trouble. And even when you looked at Covington against Masvidal, obviously in the latter part of the fight, you know, Covington destroyed Masvidal. But earlier on, Masvidal was giving Covington some trouble with those kicks. Put an Edwards in there with those body shots he was giving against Usman, and obviously threatening that head kick like he did in their second fight, their first title fight. I seriously do think, and it's going to lead to my eventual prediction, but I think Covington is going to struggle against Edwards' striking game, against how quick he is. Do you remember how fast compared to Usman? It's like Usman was moving in slow motion and Edwards was just flinging kicks like instantaneously. It was moving like Goku Ultra Instinct. It was actually insane. And then when Usman got the chance to get in close, he just snuffed out those takedown defenses incredibly. It was such a beautiful performance.
He could use them. And, you know, that's kind of where Leon was shining so bright, in my opinion, in his last fight, was just that range of threat. He had Usman on his back foot, threatening him. But whilst he was moving back, he had his kicks and his hands in play in the danger zone the entire fight. He was giving Usman so many different looks with a lot of different unique kicks, like teep kicks, leg kicks, head kicks. Like he was keeping him guessing. And that's hard when you're trying to find the timing to throw some punches and get in there for the takedown, to slow this fight down, to slowly start taking the wind out of your opponent.
So to flip the discussion, because I absolutely agree that we should be praising Edwards, especially in his last fight. But to Colby's credit, especially in the latter part of that Masvidal fight, his wrestling is top tier. Like it is so beautiful to see, especially like when they're already on the ground or close to the ground. The way he was switching around Masvidal, didn't give him any breathing room, and then just went on the ground and pound. Is there any concern in the Edwards camp that if there is a successful takedown, that at the entirety of a round that happens, that Edwards is just going to eat shots and Colby's just going to be smothering him? Because I think it's a concern for him.
Yeah, well, but that's the concern and the risk when you're fighting Colby Covington, when you're fighing Usman.
As a general.
That's the threat. That is the missile in the sky, right? It's how, and we mentioned his fight against Masvidal, and that's how he fights. So like once the wind kind of leaves his sail, the striker's sails, and Colby like starts. Like your cardio starts to go down, his cardio starts to go up, and then it just gets exemplified, and it gets further and further because he doesn't stop hustling. He's hustling the whole time, but you can't get a breath, and that's where you start drowning in those deep waters, those deep grappling waters, and that's when he starts outstriking you. He starts outstriking you because you don't have the gas to keep up with him anymore. And you're also terrified of being kept on your back, getting bashed down there for the next, 5 minutes of the fight. Is there a threat? Is there a concern? Of course, if he spends 5 minutes on his back getting mauled by Colby, that's going to change the entirety of the next 20 minutes. And Colby knows that because then he'll just force it again next round, and then it gets exemplified and it gets worse and it gets worse. But that's his game plan. That's how he fights. And that's kind of what we were looking for in that second Usman fight, because that's what Usman did in the first fight, to slow it down. It's always a risk.
And it's interesting. I was seeing some comments, and obviously pretty clearly Colby Covington fans, but saying that he has pillow hands, that he doesn't actually get many knockouts, and a lot of his recent wins especially were decisions. But that's how he fights. He is a high output fighter, and if you have someone like Edwards who can clearly go 5 rounds, who can clearly fight in those championship rounds, those high output strikes matter. They matter by the end of a round when you're talking about how many points that you have. And that is how Colby Covington wins a lot of his fights. So a lot of the predictions that I've seen, even though currently Edwards is the favorite, and I would agree with that, there are a few big people saying, no, I actually think Covington's going to win by decision. I think it's very, very likely that it does go to the 5th, and Covington might actually win by decision because he's just high output, so many strikes. And yes, Edwards is amazing with his kicks, especially body kicks, head kicks. But Colby, if I was to give a prediction, is going to outstrike him, especially on the head, especially with his hands, for the entirety of that fight, unless he gets knocked out.
You think so? So is that your prediction?
It's dude, I'm flipping back and forth because even though it was a different Masvidal, Covington was so good in that fight, right? And as I mentioned, stylistically, Colby against Masvidal was kind of similar to Edwards against Usman. You had a striker against a wrestler. And Edwards did so well against takedowns with his defense. And Colby was doing so well against a striker and taking him to the ground, especially in the latter rounds, and just smothering him. Who does it better on the day? It is literally a flip of a coin. I'm torn, bro. I'm genuinely torn.
Yeah. All right. Well, I guess we'll go into our predictions then. I'm gonna lean on Edwards. I think I saw enough. I think he's going to have too many weapons. I think he's going to keep Colby guessing, or at least threatened, so he can't just recklessly get in there, which he's done on some opponents. And I do think that, let's say, heaven forbid, he closes that gap, he pushes him up against the fence. I don't think he'll be able to hold him down, and to the point where he can make money on it. Significant in like return from his investment. So I think we could see a decision win, but the other way, I think Leon Edwards could win by decision.
Yeah, I'm at heart, probably in my head as well, I'm leaning towards Edwards too, especially because he has a bit of a reach advantage. I think it's like a 2-inch reach advantage, especially because, as I mentioned, in that last fight, Masvidal did trouble Covington somewhat with his kicks, and then you amp it up by 100 when you have someone like Edwards in there. The body kicks that he was doing against Usman, and then, again, in their second fight, first title fight, he was just preparing the body and then teeing up the head kick. There is a chance that Covington could get knocked out. Now, this is a guy that keeps going to the end of a lot of his fights. Might not happen, but I think it's a possibility. I'm going to lean towards Edwards, but I would not be surprised if Covington won this by decision. Not at all.
I will say, I think the fact that Edwards doesn't load up on a lot of his strikes, he doesn't load up on his kicks, he doesn't load up on his punches, so he doesn't fall out of position a lot. As well, it helps him sustain his like threat level of striking longer throughout the fight. You know, whereas Masvidal's kind of like, he can strike, but he's a little bit more, how do I put it nicely? You know, like thuggish about it. Is that nicely? Yeah. I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, he wants to hurt you. Every kick is designed to go through you, which is good. But the same thing is like, it uses a lot of energy as well as it's slower. But yeah.
This is a hard one. This is a hard one to call.
That's me. I picked Leon.
Let's say both of us, it is Edwards. Let's see how the fight goes. I wanted to throw this in at the end randomly, but apparently Belal Muhammad is weighing in as the backup fighter. So if things happen, someone misses weight or there's an injury or whatever, Belal's going to be ready to jump in. And I would probably say that whoever wins this fight and gets the title probably is going to fight Belal Muhammad sometime soon rather than later.
I'm happy for him being a backup fighter. Yeah. Right, but also I think they're both good matchups for him, dude.
They are, right?
I think we could see year of Belal Muhammad next year. You know, assuming this fight doesn't fall through. Yeah, because I like those matchups. I do.
Dude, I was like going through, as I do, like the fighters for this card. The amount of times that I saw Belal Muhammad has beaten someone on this card is actually insane. He's on such a tear, and I know people don't like him. But he's really good. He's really good. And he stands a good chance against both of these guys, whoever wins. So he's the backup fighter for this fight. So let's go on to the next fight. We are going to be talking about, obviously, Pantoja against Brandon Royval. Pantoja currently 26 wins, 5 losses. He's on a 4-fight win streak. He's beaten Royval previously with a rear naked choke. He's beaten Alex Perez. He's beaten Brendan Moreno to get the flyweight title in the first place. Royval, bit different, 15 wins, 6 losses. He has lost against Moreno. He has lost against Pantoja, but he's on a bit of a tear at the moment. He's on a 3-fight win streak, recently beating people like Schnell and Nicolau. So, Rob, Pantoja against Royval. You were letting me know before that you're in favor of an underdog win here. What do you think about this fight?
I am. And now this is not going to be a breakdown. I am not going to sit here and pretend I know enough about their fight styles or have watched enough of their fights. I don't watch every fight. Okay, yeah. I'm not that guy. I know a lot of the guys that are watching they could probably give you a better breakdown on the fights that I don't know than I could, but I'm not going to sit here and pretend. Yeah. So, but I will say though, when I have seen them fight, but not enough to give a proper breakdown. Yeah. I will say though, I am excited for the dynamic that's happening in that division. I think because obviously the Figueiredo, Moreno, they fight war 38 times.
Yeah. Battle.
You know, like that brought a lot of spotlight to it. And then we had the closure, and now we're seeing like a resurgence of like, I don't know, like arch nemesis coming up, like Pantoja working his way through the rankings while Moreno was up there just fighting the one dude. Yeah, the one dude that's like the boogeyman in the division.
Yeah.
And then took the belt from him. And then now another guy he's come back up to have a rematch. Like, it's just, I don't know, it's just that dynamic. You know what I mean? And I'm here for it. I think it creates a lot of stories for the division.
And credit to Figueiredo for moving up in weight class, because it's allowed a lot of those stories to develop. Because if Figueiredo didn't move up, you'd probably have him in this fight right now, arguably. So, look, if we were going to give a prediction, I would probably say Pantoja against Royval. Like, he's beaten him before. I know that Royval has come back a little bit, but I think Pantoja's got too many tricks for him. If you were to give a quick flip of the coin prediction, Rob,
mate,
what do you reckon?
For my tip, you know, on Unibet, shout out Unibet, they're paying, I think, Royval $2.60. And I don't know, same thing. The guy's coming up from the bottom to the top. Pantoja took it from Moreno. I don't know. It's a feeling. Call it a hunch, but I'm going Royval.
All right. Well, we've got two different answers there. Let's see what happens on the night or the day for us. Next up, we can, again, breeze past a few of these, but Shavkat Rakhmonov against Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. Mm-hmm. This is tough for Thompson, bro. Shavkat Rakhmonov is 17 wins, 0 losses. I really think he is going to trouble Wonderboy in this fight. Recently, Wonderboy has lost against Gilbert Burns and Bilal Muhammad, as I was kind of mentioning before, but then he beat Kevin Holland. How do you think Wonderboy is going to do against Rakhmonov?
Oh, mate. Stephen Thompson's one of those guys that I find it very hard to tip against. Okay,
you've said this before. I remember. Yeah,
and then he goes and loses. But he always loses the same way, right? He gets like pushed up against a fence, taken down, and mauled. It's age-old story for him. He either pieces him up for the entire fight, or he gets grapple mauled. Rakhmonov is a tall order. When this fight popped up, originally I was thinking, like, what the hell's going on? But I think, was Thompson supposed to fight someone else? And Rakhmonov stepped in?
No, I think it was the other way around. I think Rakhmonov was meant to fight someone else when Wonderboy popped in. I remember questioning why Wonderboy would take this fight.
Yeah, so now I'm back on my first train of thought. That is crazy.
Crazy, right?
Yeah, dude, like, because that is that, like, in my opinion, for him, that's one of the hardest fights in the division to take.
Yeah.
You know, off the cuff, I guess. Rakhmonov he's crazy, dude. Like, you can see the way he fights. Sometimes he doesn't fight intelligently, I feel. There's holes there. But that could be because he mentioned it in his last fight. He mentioned he wanted to get hurt. Like, he wanted to have the struggle. You know, he's got all the tools and he's very dangerous for it. Stephen, obviously, Thompson's got to try and keep it on his feet. He's got to move, try to keep that space. But Rakhmonov's really good at just putting in that subtle pressure, just constantly being in your face and just threatening you the entire fight.
Yeah. You never want to fight the dude that's like on a tear and kind of like earmarked potentially to be a future champion. Kind of similar to Sarukian. Everyone fighting against Sarukian was like, crap. So I reckon this one, it might not be a walkover for Rakhmonov, but I think he's a strong prediction to win this fight, or a strong tip to win this fight.
Yeah, or we could see exactly what I said. Thompson just piecing him up, keeping him like point fighting him the entire 15 minutes. It's only 15 minutes, the entire 15 minutes. Yeah. And wins by decision, you know. Yeah. But rule of thumb, you don't fight the dudes with the crazy hats, right?
No. The water is different over there, bro. There's something in the water that they're bred differently. But let's talk about, Rob, you really want to talk about this fight. Tony Ferguson, Paddy Pimblett. Now, I could go through and outline like recent wins or losses. For Ferguson, as we all know, it's not the prettiest sight. Like, he's got a 6-fight losing streak. Now, to be fair, I'm literally listing the names now. Gaethje, Oliveira, Dariush, Nate Diaz, Chandler, Bobby Green. These aren't easy fights, right? He has fought some hard fights, but he has lost 6 in a row. Paddy Pimblett, he hasn't fought in a year, coming off a win against Jared Gordon. Some people say he's been overhyped. He wasn't quite the fighter that everyone expected. But I would still say that he is the favorite to win this, especially given the state of Tony Ferguson. But how do you see this one going? How would you like it to play out?
Mate, I am most excited for this fight than any other fight on the card.
Right.
Okay, even the title fight. I want to see this fight happen, okay? Because Ferguson in his last fight, when every week we've spoken at length about Ferguson. I feel like every week we're talking about Ferguson, right? I feel like we've seen the clips. We've seen him training with Goggins. We've seen him doing that. What's it called? The Hell Week? Did the Hell Week? Every clip, he's like vomiting in the corner, dude. Like, just
cardio was never his issue. Why is he doing
punishing himself, dude? And I'm for it. I want to see Tony come back and beat Paddy. I want to see the Ferguson we saw last fight just looked old and weathered. You know, he's slow. He was making bad decisions. He looked like his body was hurting. You know, he looked like he was sore. And I want to see Tony come in with some bit of maliciousness that he had, and that glint in his eye. You know what I mean? When he was confident. Yeah. When we had Tony like that confident killer that El Kukui was, and unfortunately, I want to see that against Paddy Pimblett. You know, unfortunately for Paddy, that is, right? Because I've never seen like his fall from grace was fast and heavy after his last win, and we're not going to go into that.
No,
but I do think skill wise, Ferguson has the skills to beat him. I think he can land shots on Paddy because Paddy does leave himself open to a degree, and Ferguson does have like a really good bottom game to not let Paddy take him down and just be there. I am worried that Tony accepts the takedowns too readily, and we see him on his back a lot of the fight, like we saw in his last fight, and we've seen in fights prior, just because he's very confident in his jiu-jitsu, especially his back jiu-jitsu, but then we've seen him lose a lot of the times on his back because he was controlled for 15 minutes. Yeah. So I would like to see like a cardio version of Tony that's just in your face, moving awkwardly, landing shots. But what will we see? I don't know.
I want to ask you this question, and it's a little bit offbeat, but is there any concern with his training experience with David Goggins, but that by the time he gets to this fight, and it's only a 3-round fight, but I say only, like it's the smallest thing in the world, but is there any concern that he's just going to be absolutely wrecked with this training camp? Like David Goggins, for any of you that don't know, is an absolute monster. And if he's actually training in the same way Goggins does, I worry he might be spent before he even reaches this fight. And as someone obviously that's been through many training camps, is there a worry about wrecking yourself and doing too much cardio before you actually get to the fight?
It depends who you're asking, really, because I'm pretty sure Goggins doesn't believe in burnout. Like, it's not in his vocabulary. He doesn't believe in burnout, doesn't believe in overtraining, doesn't believe in any of that stuff. And if Ferguson's in that camp, then he'll be fine, right? If I was in that camp, I'd be screwed. Dude, I get burnt out watching the training. but yeah, so I don't know. We'll either see, like I said, we'll either see, like, I don't know what we'll see. We'll either see a monster of Ferguson, like a guy that, you know, he has his stripes and he's coming in with a killer's gaze and he's going to try and put Paddy away, or we're going to see a Ferguson that just got tortured for weeks, right? But also, I'm not smashing Paddy. I think Paddy has the tools to be in the UFC and to fight in the UFC and to make big things. Obviously, he was a fan favorite. I love the way he conducts himself. I love his enthusiasm. I love his attitude to it. Like he's fun. He's fun to watch. I just think he's got a bit of work to do. And I think the way he conducted himself last fight kind of, I don't know, backfired in a little bit. You know, he's already natural flair about him, kind of just, you know, worked against him in a sense. But Paddy's definitely the favorite in this fight, no doubt. I'm just playing devil's advocate and I'm going for the underdog, which is Fergo, El Kukui, because I think this will probably be his last fight.
I think win or lose, this should be his last fight. But touching what you were saying before with Pimblett, I think even he admitted in an interview, this fight really is a lose-lose for him because you lose against Ferguson, obviously it's very bad, but you win against Ferguson on a 6-fight losing streak currently, doesn't really do much for your career. And this is not my words, he admitted this. So I think anything short of a dominating knockout might not be the best look for Paddy Pimblett. But he needs to win this. For his sake, he needs to win.
Yeah, definitely. He's backed himself in a bit of a corner. But let's see what happens. Let's see what happens. Maybe there's something in the air. It's a good card. It's a good card.
Yeah. And finally, we got so many fight announcements to talk about. Vicente Luque against Ian Garry. Lots of controversy behind Ian Garry. We're not going to talk about that. But Rob, if I was to ask you point blank, who do you think is going to win this? Who do you think?
Again, I'm going devil's advocate. I'm going Luque. Understandably, Ian Garry's really good. He's riding high. But, mate, Luque's paying $3.85. And the guy's a killer.
That's a good shout. Yeah.
He is. He's paying $3.85. Come on. Get out of here. Yeah.
That's pretty good. Do you know what I was mentioning before that Bilal Muhammad's beaten everyone? He's beaten Vicente Luque recently too. You know what I mean? He's just everywhere, bro.
Yeah, dude.
But I want to turn off my phone. People are messaging me. This is not the right time. I'm going to go Ian Garry just so we have two different predictions for that one. But that was our predictions. That was our breakdown for UFC 296 this weekend. As always, let us know your predictions in the comments below. But Rob, we've got a bunch of other fight announcements that I want to talk about. First up, we got Tuivasa back in the game. He's going to be taking on Marcin Tybura at UFC 298 on February 17. Also, we've got Merab against Henry Cejudo as the co-main at that same event. So let's talk about these two since they're at the same event in February. What do you think about these two fights?
I think that's a good fight for Ty. I think Ty's had a bit of a tough curve lately, so I think that Tybura fight is good for him. I think it's a very, very winnable fight. I think it's a good fight for Ty, and I'm happy to see him against Tybura in that card.
Yeah. And how about Merab and Cejudo? Honestly, bro, this to me is going to be a banger. I reckon this is going to be a very good fight. It's good to see Merab. I honestly think if Merab beats Henry Cejudo, he would get a title shot. I think that's clear. Merab has proven himself. The whole thing with Aljamain and not fighting his friend is out of the water now. It has to be Merab if he won this. Some would actually argue that he probably should get a title shot now, but I think this is clear, especially because if Cejudo were to win this, he'd be right in that picture as well. But what do you think of Merab against Cejudo? I think this is going to be a great fight.
I think Merab would have to be the favorite. I think Merab's an animal, but it's good to see Cejudo hanging around, sticking around. I don't know. I'm curious. He looked very good in his last fight, really, really good. But I don't know. He didn't look as good as when he was at flyweight. So I don't think, in my opinion, because in flyweight he's very powerful, just as quick, just as cardio driven. Yeah, I don't know, but I'm curious. Curious would be the word I'm going to use. I'm curious to see how that fight plays out, how Merab handles what Cejudo can do and what Cejudo looks like after his last loss.
I'm just glad that Cejudo didn't go away. He didn't just pack up everything and be like, all right, I've lost and I'm going to leave. The fact that he's still in there, it gives a lot of name recognition to that division that is obviously stacked already, but especially when you have Aljamain moving up in weight, I think it's a very stacked division right now, and having someone like Cejudo there, it brings eyes to the division. So let's see what happens with Merab and Cejudo again at UFC 298. But Rob, the next two fight announcements that I want to talk about is Mateusz Gamrot against Rafael dos Anjos at UFC 299, and also Curtis Blaydes against Jailton Almeida at UFC 299 on March 9th. Rob, what do you think about these two fights?
Well, firstly, I want to mention that March 9th is also the card that I'm trying to get on.
I hope that you mentioned that.
Yeah, I'm trying to get on the March 9th card. That's headlined by the Sean O'Malley. I think so far they say they're saying it's in Miami. I've never been to it. It sounds like a sick place to go. But it's good to see those guys on the card. What a crazy card. I want to get on the card. I've been trying to get what's his name? Oh man,
Paulo Costa.
Paulo Costa. How did I forget his name all of a sudden? That wasn't a skit. I just had a brain fart. Yeah, I've been trying to get the thing signed with Costa. He put up a post. He said, like, you want some of this? Let's go. I'm keen. He's keen. Well, apparently he's keen. So
Yeah.
no word on him signing the contract just yet. We were supposed to fight in February this year. Hopefully we fight in March next year, right, on that card. But great names to fight. We actually sat down, so that's what I'm preparing for now. I'm in camp now as well for that.
Hell yeah.
So hopefully something comes of that. Nothing's locked in yet, but hopefully something comes in on that. And to see Gamrot fighting RDA on that card, very interesting. We had to sit down at the beginning of the podcast for like 10 minutes to work out what's going on with the weight division changes RDA. I was like, what division is he fighting? I thought he was fighting a welterweight. He's moved up and down. Don't like seeing that a lot. I think it's very hard on fighters, especially fighters that are getting later in their careers. But that's a tough fight for RDA. Like, tough fight. Gamrot's a bit of a savage, and he's still in his prime. But we'll see. And Curtis Blaydes and Almeida, mate, are they going to come in like they're wrestling singlets? It's just going to see a jiu-jitsu match,
I really hope we don't see a repeat of Almeida's previous fight. Honestly, dude. Again, I'm a fan of ground game. I'm a fan of jiu-jitsu. But when it's executed with nice ground and pound, like, I'm a fan of wrestling when it's someone like Colby Covington actually smacking someone on the ground and decent ground and pound. But that previous fight with Almeida, it was a drag.
Well,
it was a bit of a drag.
Generally, when you see two high-level grapplers, like they both
strike?
You see like a low-level boxing match.
Yeah.
You see like a low-level kickboxing match. And it's usually great because they're both just throwing around. So hopefully we see that.
Hell yeah.
Almeida's definitely got the power to trouble Blaydes, I think. But then they're heavyweights. Blaydes has power to trouble Almeida as well. I would think Blaydes actually has the better wrestling of the two, certainly the better wrestling. But how he I think it's easier to grapple from the top position than it is from the bottom. So I think we might see Blaydes take him down and just to create that sort of element in the fight. But I'm interested again.
Yeah, this is a really good fight for Curtis Blaydes. Like, I'm really happy for him. He's had a few losses recently, but if he were to fight against Almeida and beat someone like Almeida, it arguably puts him back not quite into the discussion of being anywhere near title contention, but it means he doesn't just go further down the card. You know what I mean? Because Almeida was trying to call out Garn, and Garn just wasn't interested in that fight? That's why this is happening, right? Which I get it. But
yeah, dude. If I'm Garn, I'm like, ugh.
Screw that
for me.
Completely. I'd do the same. Like, let's all be real with ourselves. If we were Garn, why would we fight Almeida voluntarily? I get it. So, but Rob, if you get to fight on that card, man, that is a banger of a card. All those fights potentially, and obviously Vera too, and Sean O'Malley. So let's see if that happens. But last bit of UFC news to talk about is Islam Makhachev. He said something that got a little bit controversial, pretty much saying that he's not interested in any more rematches. He doesn't want to fight Arman Tsarukyan again. He doesn't really want to fight Charles Oliveira again. He's already beaten them. He is looking to fight Justin Gaethje next. Now, as I said, this was a little bit controversial. What do you think about these comments from Makhachev?
Oh, mate. You can understand it, obviously, because he had to fight Volk twice. And
that's a good point. Yeah.
That could have just like burnt him out on rematches, and it kind of. But you got to. I don't know how much sway champions have. Like, honestly, I don't know. I think Gaethje for Makhachev's a better fight than Tsarukyan.
Yeah, I agree.
Maybe even than Oliveira. It's. Yeah.
Maybe. What I would say,
it's hard to say.
I get he doesn't want to do all these rematches. You made a good point. I didn't even think about the Volk. I obviously just fought Volk in different circumstances, short call up, all that stuff. but he was meant to fight Oliveira, which was a rematch. Oliveira, he only fought kind of recently. I would say it's understandable with Oliveira, not so much Sarukian. Sarukian was literally first fight in the UFC, 2-3 weeks notice, when he was 22 years old against a 27-year-old Makhachev. I say that's not quite fair. This is not any kind of immediate rematch, and this is someone that has more than proven himself. Dude, Sarukian in the years that he spent developing since he was 22, he is a much, much better fighter, and he troubled Makhachev, even though Makhachev still won that. That is a fight I think everyone wants to see, and you can't say no to that if you're in Makhachev's position. Maybe Oliveira until he gets another win, but definitely not Sarukian. If Sarukian wants that fight, I reckon he'll get it. He's on a tear.
Yeah, but we'll have to wait and see, because Oliveira was supposed to fight Makhachev as well, so I don't know where that fight went.
He was, but
disappear in the ether, you know what I mean?
But do you think
also I don't know, Oliveira was smashing people, dude. Like he fought killers. Like I don't know.
But he fought killers, but would you say
Chandler,
Dariush, and then he got you're right. You've made me change my mind. I get it.
Everyone, like all the killers in the top 5 back then, like he beat them all. I don't know. And then like he lost the belt. Looked amazing against Dariush. Yeah. And I don't know. I think he's got the votes to have a go at it.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's see what happens. I hope as well that Dustin Poirier isn't lost in this discussion. But let's see how that division is just so difficult to call. So, Rob, unless you had anything to kind of close out on, that was our 40-minute plus UFC segment.
Yeah, mate.
Crazy.
Going to have to speed through this next one. I'm going to have to leave you to entertain our guest. I have to run bathroom. I'll sprint.
Do it.
I will sprint.
Please do it. So, the reason why this is funny, for those of you that don't know, Sydney today is scorching hot. I am in this hot box of an office, and he's drinking his friggin' bucket chug of water. I get it. I get why he needs to go to the toilet. But what I'm going to say this before Rob gets back. I really hope that Rob gets that fight against Paulo Costa. I would say as well, I still want to see Rob fight Usman too. I don't know what Usman's doing. I don't know whether he's actually going to go back to his previous weight class. To me, Usman and Rob is more interesting than Rob against Paulo Costa. Paulo Costa to me seems like a bit of a flake, and I feel it in my bones that everything's signed and everything happens, and just like what happened with Khamzat Chimaev, that we don't see Costa fight Rob, and then that puts him in a hole, and then he can't fight for another few months. That's what I'm going to say. What's going on, bro?
Yo,
I was just talking about how hopefully we see you fight in March. I'm very hopeful. Yes. And Costa doesn't do his thing. Yeah.
Me too. Me too, dude.
Let's move on to the game news. Again, we're 40 plus minutes in. We're going to speed past a few of these, but Rob, sad news, E3 is over. Unfortunately, the organizer of E3, the ESA, has tweeted that after more than 2 decades of E3, each one bigger than the last apparently, it is time to say goodbye to E3. Thanks for the memories. This really does feel like the death of E3. As someone that's obviously been a gamer for as long as you've seen many E3s, I'm sure. What do you feel about this news?
Mate, we kind of spoke on it at E3 this year. We're like, the COVID changed a lot of things in this industry. Yeah. And, mate, it's just, I guess it's just a changing of the guard. It's time to change. Yeah, it's just a changing of times. It's, and we could see, it could be one of those things where they stop it for a bit. They do virtual things, they do et cetera, and then as COVID starts to drift back into the background, we forget what these community-based events where everyone got together happened, what they were like. They bring it back.
Yeah. Part of the problem is that beforehand, a lot of these publishers, especially when they weren't as big as they used to be, relied on E3 to hit viewers and to hit numbers and to trying to get that traction. But now when you're talking about how many people, and yeah, it's a big event, but how many people go through the doors versus how much money they're spending. Like, you don't even want to know how much it costs to have a booth at E3, how much money they actually have to spend. I've heard some of these figures and they're ridiculous. And to only hit that many people on the show floor, whereas let's do a free weekend this week on Steam and you're going to hit 5 to 10 times as many people as you would at an E3 for much less cost. It just doesn't make sense anymore.
More than 10 times. More than 10 times.
Yeah. It's people from all countries too, because how many people are actually able to come into an E3? It's mostly Americans, right? And that's not the whole world.
It's just a changing of times, mate. Changing of times.
Yeah. So unfortunately, E3 is going away, but hopefully it comes back in some sort of capacity, because I still did appreciate the magic that was E3. But Rob, the next bit of news that I wanted to talk about, did you hear about all the drama that happened with that game the day before, where it was this early access game and it had years of controversy? It wasn't really what it made itself out to be. So after all that controversy, after the rough state it was at launch, the studio has just come out of nowhere and said, we didn't make enough money, we're closing down. And it's kind of screwed people that bought into early access. It was like $39 US to buy into it. A lot of people are flooding Steam with negative reviews. They want refunds. It is literally one of Steam's worst reviewed games of all time in the top 10. Play count has dropped by 90% in almost 4 days. Rob, what do you think about this and just like early access games in general?
What? Oh, mate, it seems like every second game is early access now. Yeah. And that's just, I don't know. It's just become a thing. Developers can get money before they release their full game, you know?
Yeah.
And that's what a lot of these guys are doing. I don't know what the day before is. I don't want to.
It was meant to be some sort of MMO game, but then it kind of turned out to be like a survival extraction game or extraction shooter or something like that. It was just like a typical, here's a trailer, what it looks like. And it was like a few years ago. And then it just turned out to be something completely different. And they had copycat allegations, a trademark dispute. They were using unpaid volunteer workers. Absolute shit show. Yeah, it was really bad.
Dudes had slaves. Dudes had slave developing their games for them.
And then they've taken the money. Yeah.
Oh, mate. And then
it was really bad.
Yeah, they've taken the money and ran. This is just one of those, mate, it's one of those. We're announcing this one, but this has happened so much. On early access games, Kickstarter games, you name it. And that's, I guess, the risk you take when you give money to a developer for an early access game. And I'm not saying don't take the risk. I have gotten behind tons of early access games. Plenty of them I get behind and don't even play the game just because I'm on board. I'm on board with the idea that they're trying to create, and I want to support that. But games that I've bought in early access, there are heaps of games where, dude, devs just disappear for 5 years, and you see nothing, and the game's just ghosted, gone. Then you click on the Steam reviews and it's like, developers left. This game's dead. This game's dead in the water. It's just, I guess it's just one of the risks of early access. I think as humans, as people, I think the devs are dogs. I think it would have been a red flag, having slaves.
Dude,
I think the slaves would have been a red flag, but whatever.
Yeah, IGN did a great write-up on it, so if you head to their website, they have an article there right now. But what I will say is that it does suck for the actual studios that have pushed out games quite successfully after an early access or even like a donation period. The example that I would give is the System Shock remake. I supported System Shock years and years ago, and I remember I would just get email updates every few months seeing how they were doing. Very, very communicative. It comes out, it's actually good, and they're going on to make other things. Those are like the example that you want to hold up of games that do it well. And then when these games come along, it just takes them 5 steps back through no doing of their own.
You know, when we jump into the games news and stuff, because I didn't get to mention last week, I'm going to talk about some of that.
All right.
We're going to further this discussion in my what I've been doing part.
Fair. Well, let's quickly roll. I know you want to talk about this, and we have to talk about it.
I do.
Because, go on. I want you to take it, all right? Explain the situation.
So, as I was reading through the comments, which I've told you guys before, some guy, I'm not going to mention your name because I forgot it, to be honest. Didn't write it down. You know who you are. You know who I'm talking to, okay? I'm talking to you. You go, you're disappointed in me and all the talks about casual gaming, and we spoke about GTA 6 drop, and we didn't talk about the Dragon's Dogma 2 trailer drop. It was 2 weeks ago, okay? Now, mate, I need to pull you up a little bit, just a little bit, okay? Respectfully, though.
Respectfully, yeah.
News comes to me very slowly, okay? Very slowly, dude. Jonny is my greatest connection to all UFC and gaming news, okay? UFC and gaming news. He is my informant, okay? That's my connection. I live practically under a rock. I don't know if you guys... I don't know where you're from. I don't know if you have the phrase "you live under a rock," but that's me. I live under there, under a little rock. That's me. I don't get news in very freely. Okay. 2, right? The trailer wasn't exactly published everywhere. It wasn't announced everywhere. Certainly, there wasn't a guy at my door knocking on my door saying, "Hey, bro, you see the new Dragon Dogma trailer?" Okay. I didn't see it. I didn't know it was dropped, but I did watch it today. Okay, but we'll get to that. And 3, we did speak about Dragon's Dogma and how pumped up I am when it got announced 6 months ago. Yeah. Okay, so we did cover it. I don't know if you're jumping into this episode or if you just had a point to make. But yeah, we did speak about it, and I told everyone how pumped I am because I loved the first game. Now, I did watch the trailer. It doesn't have a lot of views, so jump on it. Give it a geese, okay? I give it a geese because it looks sensational. It's got gameplay. It looks so good. If you're a fan of Dragon's Dogma 1, you're going to be a fan of Dragon's Dogma 2. It looks amazing. You know what? I think it actually might be one of those, like Elden Ring was, right? Yeah. A lot of people who play Elden Ring didn't know what a Souls-like was. They still probably don't know what Dark Souls is. But it brought them into the genre. I think Dragon's Dogma 2 is going to be another one of those. Same with Baldur's Gate 3. That did the same sort of thing. A lot of people didn't know what those sort of games were, but it brought in a whole new audience. So Dragon's Dogma 2 looks amazing. Amazing. What do you think of it?
I think that's a really decent shout, especially because next year, which I believe is coming out next year, if you look at the release schedule of games, this year has been full of hitters. Next year's looking light on, and I think there's a really unique opportunity for Dragon's Dogma and Capcom to capitalize on that. I think that's a very good shout. I think it has a good opportunity to be Elden Ring-like in the sense of introducing a lot of people to that genre that had never played it before, because they've opened up game mechanics a little bit, they've made it a little bit more welcoming, things like that. So I agree. I think it's a good shout for next year.
It looks sensational, but I will say the voice acting part is still, they use the same ones from the first one, it looks like.
They're staying faithful, Rob. That's the point.
Dude, loyalty. That's what I like to see. But that's me.
So that is all the games news that we have to talk about. Next up, as always, what we're watching, playing, and reading. Rob, what have you been doing this week? Aside from training and sweating.
I started touching on this last episode. I don't know how far you got in. Did you get into this part with all the cuts and edits and mashes? Okay, so I am going to change just a little bit the way I talk about certain games, because I was speaking to my dad the other day and he's like, Rob, you got to change it off. Stop telling me the same game every week. I've stopped watching. And I was like, yeah, cheers, mate. No worries. I've lost a viewer in my own dad. So instead of just mentioning the same game every week, what I'm going to do is I'm going to also mention games that I have on my radar that are getting updates, that have updates, so that if you are interested in them, you can go suss them out yourself. Because generally I play the same batch of games and just cycle through them. And I'm so happy this batch got pushed to me because like I love them. I love these games. You know, I try. And they're usually just roguelike 2D games. So
yeah,
you mentioned 2024.
yeah.
Caves of Cud drops in full release in 2024. If you don't know what Caves of Cud is, it is not a it's an amazing game. It is an amazing game, and it'll take you a long while to understand why it's amazing. Okay, but once you get it, you'll get it. And I don't think I can explain it more than that. I'm going to keep it enough. Like I feel like I'm explaining it mysteriously enough that I'll get a couple people, and then you'll see.
Okay, all right.
Okay, because it's a weird game, and it's not a graphically pleasing game unless you like those sort of graphics. I don't mind them, but it's cool. It releases next year, and I'm very excited for that. But
Yeah, sweet.
what I've been playing lately is Tales of Marjayal. I don't know if you've heard of it.
You did say that. You did say that last week. Yeah.
Yeah, I said I wanted to get into it, and it took me days of studying, but I got into it, and it's fun, dude. Like if you like character building, it is so much fun. It's again the graphics are they're nothing to nothing to write home about, but building characters is just enjoy trying to pick your synergies and try to pick your armors and stuff like that. It's just a whole lot of fun, right? And
Sick.
I've been doing much. I've been watching Kingdom of Ruin on Crunchyroll, but I don't know.
What would you recommend it? I've got it on my watch list at the moment.
Oh, if you can't find anything else, dude, you've got decades of good anime to watch. Don't watch that one first. Yeah. Like that one's like just scraping the barrel a little bit.
Yeah. I love that you say that because what I've been watching recently, I decided, and a lot of people that are fans will understand why I've done it. I rewatched the entirety of Jujutsu Kaisen from start to finish, including the movie. And Rob, it is incredible. I get everything now. I haven't gone like ages in between the first and the second season. I'm telling you, bro, please, you need to give it it's actually really good. Recently, the fight scenes have just been next level. Like this season is where it's really kicked in. I know you didn't like the first few episodes, even though it set up the context between the characters. The latter part of that season right now is phenomenal. I'm telling you.
All right, I might pick it back up. We'll see.
All right.
Oh, but then I only watched like the first 2 episodes, and you're telling me there was like a third one of flashback. It's doing that thing. It's doing that thing where it focuses on too many characters.
But that's the type. I
just want to see the Devil King, dude. That's all. The Demon King that lives inside Old Boy. That's the only guy I want to see.
Yeah. It's kind of like Black Clover where it has a lot of characters. That is just the style of anime, and it gets even worse. Like especially when you get to like the Culling games and the latter arcs, all these characters, like who the hell are any of these? That's why I had to rewatch it because I was like, I don't remember who this person is and their connection to that person, all these names that they're mentioning. So rewatching it has definitely kind of clicked things for me.
Okay.
So yeah,
well,
but
I'm in the same boat where I need to watch something again, and that's Goblin Slayer 1. I really watch that to watch the second season because I really liked Goblin Slayer. I really liked it, dude.
It's on my watch list too. Like I've heard decent things of the new season, so I'll see what I'll do. But in terms of what I've been playing, shout out to Nintendo. They sent me a code of Super Mario RPG, the remake on Nintendo Switch. I mentioned this in a much earlier episode earlier this year, saying I was very excited to play it, especially because even though I eventually did play it through other means, it didn't release on Super Nintendo across the world at the time. It didn't actually come out in places like Australia. So a lot of people didn't actually get the opportunity to play this game. It was a very, very cool collaboration from memory between Nintendo and Square Enix. Top-down, isometric, old-school RPG. You're going through, you're recruiting team members. You've got different attacks, like there's some strategy involved in terms of the timing of attacks and when you select the buttons. You've got special items that you get. The world is very, very colorful. You can even like switch between the old school style of music and the new renditions of the music tracks that they've done. I'm having lots of fun with Super Mario RPG, especially because it's a game that you can just play on the Switch. I took it back home with me when I went there for my sister's wedding. I was just playing it on the go. You collect stars and you go through. The story's very goofy, but it's very typical like Nintendo. I think anyone that loves Super Mario and that loves those old school RPGs like Final Fantasy, etc., I think there's a lot to love, and it looks beautiful. Like they've even like introduced different cutscenes too for a lot of the boss battles. Love Super Mario RPG. I think it's a good shout to pick up if you have a Switch.
Yeah, we mentioned it before. I'm super for remakes. Yeah. I'm so down for them because like there's a bunch of people that love a particular game, and to bring it back out, and it just does. I don't know. It just does the fans so much service. I love it.
Yeah.
I love it.
And especially to do it so well. This isn't just like a fresh coat of paint. Like they had to rebuild it from the ground up. They didn't have to add in the old tracks and allow you to swap between, but they did that. They didn't have to add cutscenes, but they did that. It looks really, really phenomenal. It has a unique art style, and some might prefer how the game looked when it was back in its kind of 2D realm, but I still think it's very pretty, and mainly it's just fun. Like it's one of those pickup games. You don't need to think about it. You're literally fighting this big sword dude. Like it's not meant to be taken seriously, but there is strategy involved. It's a lot of fun recruiting new team members too. So yeah, I would definitely recommend it to any Switch owners. But Rob, aside from that and watching more Jujutsu Kaisen, that's pretty much what I've been watching, playing, and reading. So unless you had anything to kind of mention, we have viewer questions to talk about.
Yeah, no, I'm ready for these questions. I'm ready. But
do you know why I'm ready? Yeah, go on.
Well, I'm super stoked we made it to this part of the video. Okay, super stoked. We've made it this far. Okay, everyone knows I've been having a lot of PC issues, and my old PC broke. The new one's old and just chugging along with the beautiful thing. It's just chugging along, getting me through. I may have a really cool and exciting update next week for a potential new rig. I'm talking to someone as we speak about, setting me up, like giving me a spaceship to try and play these 2D games on. So hopefully I can speak about that next week. But let's get into these questions, mate.
Do you know why I want to?
The first one, I can see the first one, and I'm already for it.
Yeah, and that's why I've kept it, because these questions were from 3 weeks ago, because we kept having issues. We had to miss a podcast, so we haven't actually been able to answer. They've been sitting here ready for us to answer. So for those of you that have been sticking around for a while, you might see your old questions pop up right now. But as Rob always says, we always keep a bank of questions to bring up. So first of all, first question comes from Dunham.
Key example is this.
This one, what is
Dunham? We've answered him before.
He asks good questions.
He's got good questions.
He does.
Love Dunham.
Yeah. Dunham asked the question, what is one thing / trope in anime or Japanese media that you just don't understand why they do it? Rob?
Oh, can you go first?
Yes, I know what my thing is for sure.
Okay.
It is the whole, not even just sister complex, it is sibling complex. In anime in particular, it comes up too frequently, and I don't get it. I don't get why the dude in Black Clover is obsessed with his sister. I don't get why the dude in Spy Family is so obsessed with his older sister. I don't get why in it's Bungo Stray Dogs, why there is a couple there that say that they're siblings and she has a thing for the dude, but they're not actually related. Why is it funny? I don't understand. Why do they do it? It is weird. Yeah. It'll never make sense to me.
I think, well, like obviously that doesn't make sense to me either. So I'm going to jump on that too. Just to save my own skin. I can't say, well, I get it. You know what I mean, dude?
Yeah.
But I'm just going to go with that. I'd have to really think about it to see if there's any other tropes that I really did not get. Oh, you know what? Have you ever seen any romance animes where the chick's cleaning the dude's ears?
No, is that a thing? What?
Yeah, dude. I've seen it in heaps of romance animes where, I don't know, it's like the dude asks the chick to clean his ears and he sits on her lap and she cleans his ears. It's weird. and it
So weird.
it just
so
looks
weird.
vulnerable.
That is so strange, bro. I don't get some of these things. Like, I love anime as a whole, but some of these weird tropes, some of these references just don't make sense to me. Anyway.
Still for it, but still for it. Let's go.
Next question that we have is from Found Prospect 2604. Did either of you finish Final Fantasy 16? Do you think it should have been nominated for Game of the Year? Maybe over Resident Evil 4 or Alan Wake? I don't think it would win, but seeing it up there would have made me happy. Now, I want to answer this question because I played a bit of Final Fantasy 16. I haven't finished it, and I very much intend to, especially over the break. But I would say, and Rob, you and I mentioned this, I don't think remakes should be in Game of the Year. Mm-hmm. I don't think something like Resident Evil should be there.
I knew you were going to do that. You were going to say that.
Yeah. But also as well, like I haven't played Alan Wake, okay? But I've heard some discussion that Alan Wake came out later than a year, and because of that, it was in the reviewers' minds, a lot of the people that gave him the nominations for Game of the Year, and they instantly and implicitly give it a preference because they just played it. You know, anytime you play a game and you finish it, you're like, this is the best thing in the world.
Yeah, definitely.
Maybe a bit of that went on. I would have liked to have seen Final Fantasy 16 in there because it, like, the I know a lot of people criticize it because it had a lot of cutscenes or whatever, but you need to like appreciate the level of effort and time that went into those cutscenes to even it wasn't, you know, the kind of Final Fantasy that maybe you're used to, more action adventure, but it was still a lot of fun and it was a good story. So I would have liked to have seen it there. That's my bit.
Yeah, and I'm with you on that same page that I don't think remakes should be in the nominations. And I hope I'm not going against what I said at the time. I can't remember what I said at the time. I'm sure I wouldn't have argued with you. I probably would have. I don't know. But yeah, I also think 16 should have been up there instead of maybe 4.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I definitely. And Resident Evil 4 was great. But yeah. Mm-hmm. So maybe the next Final Fantasy.
But it had its heyday. It had its time.
That's the point that I'm saying, Rob. Like, let's say this year, for some reason, Super Mario RPG was absolutely incredible, knocked it out of the park. I still would have said, but it had its time back in the day when it was like frequently lauded as one of the greatest collaborations, one of the greatest RPGs. Exactly. So why are we here discussing it again in terms of Game of the Year discussions?
You can't double dip fan base, dude.
Yeah, I agree.
You can't double dip, man.
So next question that we have is from John Perez 7487. What RPG would you recommend based on gameplay and story specifically? Rob, I thought you'd like this question.
RPG, gameplay and story. Oh, there's so many different types of gameplay though. Like, if you want to fall down a rabbit hole of story, you got to suss out a story-driven game. And no game, I think, can capture a story more than one you create yourself. So I would have to recommend Baldur's Gate 3. But if you weren't inclined to sussing that out, Dragon Age Origins was phenomenal, dude, to be able to influence your own story like that. And there's Mass Effect as well, if you want a more sci-fi twist on it. Yeah. And obviously Final Fantasy X, like any of the Final Fantasies, like I'm going to go old school, but 10, 8, 7, not 9. 9, the monkey dude can stay chill for a bit, but yeah, like there's those games, they're all pretty up to scratch. If you want like a unique story, then you got to suss out Dark Souls. It's story and lore and finding the pieces of the story. You'll have to watch a YouTube. You have to
work for it. Yeah.
You have to watch a YouTube on it. But dude, it's so cool. It's something you don't ever come across, I guess.
Yeah. If I was to give one answer, it would have to be Fallout New Vegas. Like
Mario
you mentioned,
RPG.
Yeah, Mario RPG. But maybe not so much in terms of gameplay, because it was based on the engine and all that. There's a lot of history behind it. But in terms of story and choice and replayability and dialogue, I think many RPGs fall short of Fallout New Vegas. So 100% if you haven't played that. And I love Fallout 3 more, but in terms of story, New Vegas wipes the floor with everything.
Yeah. It's on the same vein of like that's why that game was so good, because you create your own story. It's like, yeah, you're so immersed in it because it's your story. You make decisions and you see those decisions having far-reaching consequences. It's so cool.
Yeah.
And I probably prefer the gameplay of Fallout 4, but I liked
100%. I agree. Yeah.
I liked like building a base and then going out on an adventure and then coming back to my base and just like sitting in a chair.
It's I kind of touched on it. It's only because Fallout 4 had the opportunity to improve the gameplay mechanics, and they worked with its software on the Doom team. They were able to improve shooting and obviously introduce base building. Whereas with New Vegas, it was like very, very, I'm being very quick with this, but bare bones, here's the engine. You have 18 months to develop this game. That's what it was. So what were they going to do more to what all the gameplay was in Fallout 3, which, let's be real, was very janky, as much as I love that game. They weren't able to improve it more, but they did what they could in terms of the story and decision-making. So next question that we have is for Rob. Riley Patterson 8060. Rob, what was your next striking discipline after you got your black belt in karate?
It was Hapkido. Yeah.
Okay.
Hapkido. I went to Hapkido and Jiu-Jitsu. And then the school which was doing Hapkido Jiu-Jitsu stopped doing Hapkido. Well, no, they didn't really stop doing Hapkido. They introduced MMA as well. And then I straight off Hapkido into MMA, and the rest is history.
Sweet. Next question is from Chef Nasty 00 asking, this was following off the back. We were talking a little bit about Sean O'Malley and Cheeto Vera. They asked the question, with all due respect, how has Cheeto been impressive of late? I wanted to talk about this a little bit. I would still say Cheeto has been impressive. A lot of people talk down his victory against Sean O'Malley because he somehow got a nerve in his leg and blah, 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 blah. But he still did the damage. He still won the fight. And recently he's won the last 5 of his 6 fights, right? He's knocked out Dominic Cruz. He's defeated Pedro Munoz. That's why I would say we were back in Cheeto. And I do rate him when he eventually fights, Sean O'Malley. Lucky, unlucky with the leg attack, whatever. But I still think he's been decent as late.
Did I back him? I feel like
we haven't done our official
animal, but I think I'm still going to be backing Sean. Like everything I've ever said in any prediction or breakdown with Sean, such as his uncanny ability to land shots on your button, like they hold true into the Cheeto fight. I think I just mentioned Cheeto looked like an animal in that stare off. Like, like the dude looks. Yeah, he looked cool.
Well, we talked about it because like the way we do our podcast is we'll do the full breakdown when the actual card is taking place that week. So we talked about it very quickly when the fight was actually announced. It was like alongside all the other big fight announcements. So we kind of did as like throwaway comments, but it wasn't our full breakdown. If I was to give a prediction right now, I think Sean O'Malley would win, but we can't diss Cheeto Vera. But last question, a bit of a funny one. I always like to include something like these. But from JPR96, question for both. Favorite candy of all time, chocolate bars included? Rob?
Okay. I don't eat candy. I eat chocolates, though. Are they candies?
Well, look, he said like chocolate bars included. So I would say any kind of chocolate.
Okay, I'll just say Toblerone.
Oh, it's a good answer. Yeah.
Toblerone, like you forget how good Toblerone is until you have it again. And you're like, dude, why am I not eating this every single night?
Yep. I would say Ferrero Rocher has been my favorite.
My wife's favorite too. Like,
it's so cool. Good, man.
You ever had the ice cream? That was good.
Is it Ferrero Rocher ice cream?
Yeah, dude. Didn't like it.
I got to give it a go out of curiosity.
Yeah. Meet your heroes, dude.
It's just good because like it comes in individualized packets and you can just have one and leave it and the rest is staying fresh and it's the Nutella inside. It's the
what
best.
Do you mean you have one, dude? As soon as I rip that seal off the box, it's gone.
Bro, we're not all training every day and exhausting 10,000 calories a day, all right? Some of us have office jobs and we sit down all day. All we can do is have one little chocolate, okay?
I worry that, like, I don't have any convention of what eating normal is. You know what I mean? I don't.
Yeah.
I don't. And I think long story short is I can never stop training or I'm going to blow out. I think that's why you see so many athletes that they just get fat, dude. They blow out because we don't realize we're eating like crazy amounts, but because we train all day, we just don't get it.
Yeah, that's pretty much what it is. But Rob, all the questions, we finally got to them. Mate. We'll try and include the questions from last week's podcast in the following week, but leave your questions below. But that was it. That was our predictions for UFC 296.
Mate, and that's our episode.
It was a good episode. Touch wood. We didn't have any issues. Not even one.
Touch wood, dude. We made it. Look at us go. We made it here all the way to the end of the video. Hour 15 minutes. Not a hitch. Not a hiccup.
Hell yeah. So as always, like, subscribe if you are new. We'll be back next week for more predictions, more games, and more UFC talk.